Guys, welcome back to the podcast. I hope you're enjoying it so far. And in today's episode, I've got a really important topic I want to cover with you. And that is this one thing that could be destroying your excitement, motivation, and results. That thing is being vague with your goals. Okay? Vague goals create anxiety. Okay? Vague actions give you no actionable things to go and focus on and implement. And vague goals certainly do not allow you to feel inspired and feel excited to go and put in the work. Now, if there is any ambiguity with either what you want to achieve or how you're going to get there, i.e. the process, then this is going to leave you feeling hopeless, powerless, and anxious, okay? Because there's nothing to actually direct your focus onto. So the more clarity that you have on your goals and your actions, the more inspired you are going to be to go and put in the work. And just on a side note, I'm not a fan of the word motivated, okay? The reason why is that, don't get me wrong, that feeling of motivation where you get that surge in dopamine and neurotransmitters feels amazing, okay? When it happens, enjoy it, celebrate it. But frankly, you're not going to feel motivated all the time for whatever your goals are, whether that is getting in great shape, progressing your career, or just getting your life in order and feeling on top of things. You're not going to feel motivated all the time. So I like to use the word inspired, because if you're inspired to do something, then you have a stronger reason why it's important, and a reason and a recognition and awareness of the impact that's going to have on your life if you go and achieve it. So that's why I like to use the word inspired. Now, the more clarity you have on your goals and your actions, the more inspired you're going to feel, okay? Inspired, that is the key word there. And I just want to share with you an example of something that happened the other day that kind of inspired this podcast episode. Now, I was chatting with someone and they said, Isaac, look, I'm really struggling to get to the gym consistently. I keep coming up with excuses. I keep booking on, and then last minute I keep booking off, and I just think, I just don't want to do it. Now, we had a good talking. I asked a few questions, and we had a really good chat over Messenger, and I sent a few voice notes that hopefully inspired him to do it. And the first thing was actually that feeling of motivation, that surge in feel good, that comes after you do the thing, okay? It does not come before. That's a really important thing to understand, because so many people will put off doing the things they want because they're waiting until they feel motivated. Okay? Motivation comes after you do the thing, not before. So we spoke a little bit about that, and the next day they turned up at the gym and they did a great session, and then I messaged them to check in the day after. And I said, hey, how did it go? What's the plan? When are you next in? Because it's all about building momentum if you're out of the habit of something. And he said, yeah, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. Well, I'm going to try and get in later, but I might not because I've got, something on this weekend. And I said, look, dude, that phrase, I'm going to try and do this, is so non-committal. You actually giving that phrase and using that internal dialogue is keeping you stuck and actually setting you up for failure. It's not going to allow you to feel good. Now I said, look, either you are going to do it or you aren't. It doesn't actually matter which answer it is, but look at your schedule and be realistic. Do you have the time to do it or not? If you do, come in and do half an hour and get it done. But if you don't have the time, just say no. Actually saying, I'm going to try and do it, and being vague and ambiguous with it around what your intentions are is so non-committal. That will make you feel worse by saying that and then not doing it, because it's this big open loop in your brain, and you are just not committing to anything. If you say no, you can make peace with it and say, nope, I don't have time. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to come in on a different day instead. Or you say, actually, yes, I have time. I'm going to come in. And I explain that to them around, look, be intentional. Don't be vague with it. And literally within a couple of hours, they ended up turning up at the gym. So it was a very productive conversation, but I know that this thing holds so many of us back, including myself. Okay, now, why do so many of us set vague goals? Why are we always so ambiguous around what we want and what we're actually going to go and do? Frankly, it's scary. Okay, when you get clear and give yourself space to think about what you really want, it is scary, because when you become aware of it, you're going to be required to change. Okay, you are actually going to have to change your identity. You're going to have to become a different person. And that is why subconsciously so many people don't create space to really think about what they want and set crystal clear goals, because they know if they do, they're going to have to change what they're currently doing, which is uncomfortable. They might also be afraid of failing, okay, because they might have tried stuff before and it might not have gone how they want. They might also be afraid of success, because if you are so used to struggling, you become attached to struggle. And the minute you don't feel that you're struggling, it's, again, very unfamiliar. So I'm just on that. Like, I remember the first time I struggled for years, and the big struggle for me was around trying to grow my business and trying to help more people, make a great life for myself. And the minute I actually started, feeling successful and achieving the first kind of sign of success that I wanted, I remember I invested in a business mentor, my prices increased, and I actually had a new client join, and I felt so uncomfortable because I actually was achieving the success that I wanted, but it was so unfamiliar, I actually felt uncomfortable with it. And that's a really, really normal thing that is going to stop a lot of people from setting, setting clear, crystal clear goals. And that's why so many of us will stay vague and ambiguous with what we ask ourselves to do. We are all so used to living in our quote unquote comfort zone. But just on a little side note, the comfort zone is absolute bullshit, because the comfort zone is supposedly comfortable, but it's full of self-doubt, overthinking, anxiety, being uncomfortable. And there is nothing comfortable about being in that zone. It's actually just our familiar zone, okay? You only stay there because you know what it feels like, because it's familiar to you. Even if it's not actually serving you a purpose, even if you are miserable, even if you are uncomfortable in your body, in your mind, in how you're seeing yourself and what you're doing, your living situation, your career, whatever it is, it's familiar. So you know what it feels like. And the unknown is the thing that is incredibly scary, even if on the other side of that, is going to be a positive change. That's why so many people will continue to, have habits that do not serve them, that do not allow them to feel and look how they want to in their body. That's why so many people will stay in relationships that don't serve them. So many people will stay in jobs and careers that don't serve them, because it is known and it is in the familiar zone. So if you are currently in a thing of feeling anxious, doubting yourself and your ability to go and achieve the thing, and you're saying, no, I'm just staying in my comfort zone, you are not. Okay, it is not comfortable. And I'm telling you this because I appreciate it's uncomfortable to hear, but that discomfort is going to be the fuel that's going to go and drive you to action. You're actually staying there because it is your familiar zone. I really want you to make that distinction. So where was I? Let me just have a little look. So the reason I share all of that is because having an understanding of why do we actually do this is really important for you unlocking and kind of understanding why you are maybe acting the way you are now and putting off making the changes that you want. We don't do things for no reason whatsoever. If something has zero positive benefit to us, we don't do it. Okay, and the reason why we set vague goals and we're ambiguous and non-committal is because, one, we stay where we are, and that is familiar, and we all want to kind of fight to stay where we are familiar. It also means we can't fail, but it also, on the other side of that, means you can't succeed. Okay, so that is why we often do this. Now, here's how setting crystal clear goals, here's how you do it, and this is how it's going to have a massive positive impact on your life. The first step is to ask yourself, what do you actually want? Okay, what do you want? If you were to picture like how life would be, what do you actually want? And I don't mean need. Okay, there is a big difference between needs and wants. Okay, so many people will just go for need, and they'll say, oh, well, I don't need that, but they might want it. And it's that the gap between what you need and what you want, that is where the fulfillment really is. Okay, that is so important to understand. Needs are kind of like the bare basics, the necessities, but the wants, the things that you don't actually need, but just for whatever reason, deep in your soul, deep in your head, you really want it. That is where the fulfillment is going to be. So how many of you listening to this actually ever have created space for you to think about, what do you actually want? And the way that we actually do this, and I do this with clients inside Lead from the Front, is we like to split up our goals just so we're looking at the big picture into kind of physical, professional, and then personal. So physically, what do you want? Okay, actually take a second to, even pause this podcast now and visualize that physically. And the way I like to do this as well, I'll ask you two questions, is what does success look like? Okay, so what would your body look like? Like objectively, what achievements might you have done? Might you have lifted a certain amount in your bench press or your squat? Might you have done a triathlon, or have you done a 5K in a certain time? What does it look like? But do not only focus on that. The next question, incredibly important, is what does success feel like? What does that actually feel like to you? So physically, answer those. Professionally, what does success look like to you professionally? Is it earning a certain amount of money? Is it working a certain number of days a week? Is it actually having a certain amount of fulfillment and impact with what you do? What do you want? Just picture the scene and describe it. And how does that also feel? Because it's all very well, someone saying, oh, I want to earn X amount of money. But if you don't think about how do you actually want to feel, then you could feel like shit, feel incredibly overworked, incredibly stressed, have poor relationships with yourself, with your health, with your significant others, with your friends, because you were just working all the time. So you might have hit the goal and look successful, but feel incredibly unfulfilled and feel miserable. And then personally as well, what does that look like, and what does that feel like for you? Take a second now and actually just pause this podcast and visualize, create some space for you to think about, what do you want? Literally go and do that now. I'd really recommend you do that. Now, you're probably thinking about that and you're like, oh God. And the reason why it's, again, uncomfortable is because it's unfamiliar. And you might be in a couple of camps. You might either A, know actually exactly what you want. Like you might be able to answer that question there very clearly and very easily, but you've just been scared to create space and think about it and admit it, because when you do that and you say write it down on paper, it becomes real, and you're not going to be able to ignore it and stay in your familiar zone anymore. Or B, you might actually be in a different camp where you don't know what you want, and you might be like, oh, that's a good question, Isaac. I don't actually know what I want. And if that's you, that is totally okay. But if you're using that I don't know what I want as an excuse to sit and do fuck all, that is not okay. Okay? You have to use your imagination. Use your imagination. We obviously live in a society where you see things on social media, like our imagination and attention span has disappeared. Use your imagination. What might you want? Okay? And if you don't know that, if that's absolutely fine, but you have to try things, because every time you try something and you try, whether it's say a new job or you try working towards a physical goal of a certain amount of weight loss or a certain performance target, like, you will not know until you go towards it, is this giving me the feedback and the feeling that I want? If it is, great, you're onto a winner, go more towards it. But if it's not, that is not wasted time. You haven't failed, it just bounces you off in the different direction, so you have much more clarity on what you don't want to do. Okay, use your imagination, try things, really, really important. Use that to steer you in the right direction. So that is the first step. And I just want to add a little bit of something, like where I mentioned around what does it look like and what does it feel like. If you are saying to yourself, answering those questions, you'll say, well, what does success look like physically? I want to weigh X amount and that's it. That is wrong. Okay, you don't. I have achieved enough goals in my life and also helped enough clients lose that weight, hit their target weight, to realize you then get there and nothing changes. Okay, nothing changes. You can actually get to the goal and then realize that wasn't the thing I wanted. Okay, so that's why it's so important to ask yourself the question of what does success feel like? So if you're saying I want to weigh X amount, that is too vague. That is not right. Okay, the way we want to change that and to make it more effective is, I want to maybe weigh between X and Y, okay? But ultimately, I want to have a body that I feel comfortable in. I want to have a body that I feel confident in, that allows me to feel proud, okay? That is much stronger. Okay, I want to have a body that allows me to play with my kids and not feel out of breath. Okay, that is much more powerful than saying, I want to hit an arbitrary number on the scales, or I want to earn an arbitrary number in money. Okay, that is so, so important. So that is the first stage, is actually thinking about and creating space for what do you want? Not need, want. That gap between what you need and what you actually want, that is where you're going to get the fulfillment and really get the inspiration and feel proud, because that is the extra mile, and the extra mile is never crowded. Okay, go for what you want. Now, the next stage in the process is to get clear on the process of it. Okay, so it's having clear goals that aren't vague, so you've got a vision that you're working towards. At least now you have like somewhere you can see where you're going. Okay, the how is actually harder to do, and that's why obviously it's so valuable to have a coach, someone like myself that, you know, I am going to blow my own trumpet. I am really good at helping people do this, okay? But I want to share with you some of the things that you can do to achieve the how do I do it, right? The first thing is to ask, right, what am I going to measure, okay? What am I actually going to measure objectively to give me data to tell me how am I doing, okay? And inside Lead from the Front, we call these success metrics. And the reason this is so important is that if you are not measuring data and you have nothing objective that you are measuring, you are just relying on your feelings, okay? Now, I believe massively in that you need to have both. You need to have objective data that you can measure, because the numbers don't lie. They will give you the direction of how you're actually getting on. But I also believe in subjective. You need to listen to how you feel. Do not be one of those people that just chases numbers, that just chases a certain scale weight or something like that at the expense of how they feel. If you feel like crap, there's a reason. Listen to that. Use that as a signal that something in the process is not right for you. So I'm a big believer in both, but it's so important to have objective data that you're measuring. Okay, and we call these success metrics. And I just want to share an example that I actually, the other week, I was going through, and I still am at the moment, going through a challenge in business. And for me, I was feeling really down about it. Okay, I was feeling down about it. I hadn't felt like this in a long time. And I was like, this is tough, okay? And I was feeling in a low mood, okay? So what I did was I realized actually all I'm doing right now is listening to feelings. How do I feel in the moment? So I actually went and looked at data. I looked at data of the things that I was actually doing, and instantly I looked and I was like, if I rewind 12 months, okay, I am like 50% ahead of where I was 12 months ago, even though subjectively in the moment I felt like I wasn't doing enough and I wasn't getting to where I wanted to be. As soon as I looked at data, I literally thought, what am I complaining about? Like, why am I acting like a child? So that is why, and instantly it changed my state to realize actually you're doing okay. And that is the importance of having both objective and subjective metrics of success, okay? So that is the power of it. Now, where was I? So if you aren't measuring objective data and you're only going off feelings and you wear your heart on your sleeve, you are always going to be volatile, okay? You are going to be on an emotional roller coaster and you are never going to make progress consistently, because how we feel in the moment, often, it's due to a whole number of things, so many things, but usually it's due to things that have happened prior, okay? And it's so important to have objective things. And another thing that's really important here is you do not want to have one metric of success, okay? Do not put all of your eggs in one basket. If you do this, and I want to share with you a perfect example of this, in a lot of clients come to me because they want to feel much better in their body, okay? And with that often comes body fat loss and weight loss. So one of the mistakes that they made previously is the only thing they care about is seeing that number on the SAD step go down, okay? And the reason this is such a bad idea is because they have one metric of success. They don't listen to anything else. They just want to see that number go down. And they'll often do it once per week, okay? That gives you one opportunity, one moment to see where you're at, okay? One time. So here's how I would change that and how I do it with clients so that they get a much better and more well-rounded view of how they're actually doing. Instead of, say if someone's goal was to lose body fat and weight loss, instead of scale weight once per week and that's it, we would do scale weight. That is a really good one to go for. I don't necessarily do it with everyone, because if someone has like a poor relationship with food or body image or anything like that, then I wouldn't really recommend it. But for a lot of people, it's a really useful thing, one of many things to monitor. And we would do this twice per week, okay? Do this twice per week. And I would either say do it daily or twice per week. The reason daily, not many of my clients do it just because it's easy to fall into a bit of a hyper focus on it, or a bit of an obsessive thing. But I suppose the actual benefit of if you did do it daily was you normalize the daily fluctuations, because your body mass is never just going to go in a straight line. Like you could, this say might be 500 milliliters of water. I do actually need a drink. That weighs half a kilo. If I drink that now, okay, and down that, then I instantly weigh half a kilo heavier. Not because I've gained more body fat, but literally the things that I consume and put in my body weigh something, okay? So that's, I suppose, the benefit of doing it daily, is that you would actually normalize the daily fluctuations and you start to understand, oh, that's actually really normal for it to go up and down. Most of my clients, I don't really do it daily. I like to do it twice per week, just because it gives you more data to work with. Okay, if you only have one opportunity, like I said, that sets you up for, oh my God, there's so much pressure on one point in time. There's so much pressure on this one data point. They could do everything right, maybe, and then the night before they might have a bit more salt, or a bit more carbohydrate, and then with every gram of carbohydrate, you're going to store 3 grams worth of water. Body fat is actually coming off, but they might have had a carby meal, might be retaining more water, and they might weigh a little bit heavier at that one point in time, even though they're doing everything right. And the problem with that is that people would then, that would ruin their mindset. They would be like, oh my God, nothing's working, because there was one success metric. Okay, that is the danger of only having one success metric. So instead of that, I would have scale weight, say twice per week instead of once. But I would also look at things like progress pictures. Take progress pictures, like how are you actually looking? You could do measurements of certain body parts. If your hips, if your waist you wanted to be smaller, if you wanted to get bigger arms, like whatever it is, actually take more specific measurements. And you could, how are your clothes fitting? Okay, how are you actually fitting into your clothes? Are they super tight? Are they loose now? Are they fitting much better? But all of those things give a much more well-rounded view of how you're actually doing. And it means there's less pressure on one metric. And that allows you to keep more emotionally stable. Professionally, it might be impact-wise. Like I'm going to measure my impact. And like just for me, I measure 2 things, like number of results, okay, but also depth of results. I don't care if someone, and I don't want someone to come and work with me and be like, oh yay, I lost 10 pounds and that be it. I want people to say, my life has changed. Okay, you have changed my life. That is the depth of results that I am looking for. Okay, so yes, within that, people will lose weight. People will lose that, but it's not just about that. It's about actually the impact that has on their life and how they feel about themselves, their personal management and personal leadership and personal standards. Okay, that's what's important to me. So for you, it might be impact. How much fulfillment, how much of a difference am I making in my career? It might be income. Okay, that's another one to measure. If you have like a high income, you are making a big difference to the market that you're serving. And lastly, freedom, like working hours. How much freedom do you have? If you have super high income, you've got super high impact, but you have 0 freedom and you are tied to your phone all the time, and that isn't allowing you to feel how you want, then you can see, actually, I need to focus more on, removing myself and just giving myself more space and time for me. Okay, that gives you a much more well-rounded view of everything rather than just focusing on one metric. Personally, just a few examples, it might be time for myself, it might be days off, or time for my partner, date nights, how many date nights am I having, or times for hobbies. Okay, all of that. Can you see how much more well-rounded that is if you have multiple metrics across different areas of your life? You've got physically, I'm going to be in great shape. Professionally, I'm going to be thriving in work. Personally, I'm actually just going to feel great and proud of who I am. Okay, that gives us such a better, well-rounded view. And that's exactly what we do inside Lead from the Front with clients, is we look and plan everything with the big picture in mind so that you're not focusing on one area and developing that all at the expense of other areas. So the last bit is, once you've decided what you're actually measuring, it's like, what do I do now? And a really nice way to do this and really systemize this is to create monthly, weekly, and daily behaviors and actually write them down, get clear on what you need to do, and categorize them. See, for me, on my phone, I can't actually do it because I'm recording this podcast on my phone, but I use a software called Trello, right? And that's like an organization software. And I have lists. I have like an overview of what I need to do. I then have monthly behaviors, then I have weekly behaviors, and then I have daily behaviors. And I go in, and every single time I've done the behavior for the day, I tick it off. And then I get to the end of the week, and then when I'm reviewing how this week has gone, I can literally just see the ticks. Have I done it or have I not? If I'm then feeling crap and then I look and I've got no ticks, it's like, okay, fair enough, I didn't do the thing, right? And it just completely normalizes it. And it's the ambiguity that is killing your motivation and killing results. Like, how many of you listening to this actually have a list and know exactly what you need to do on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis, and on a daily basis to achieve the result that you want. I can guarantee that you don't have a really clear list of that. And if you do, hats off to you. Okay, but not many people that I work with or chat to actually have this. So I just want to give you a few examples of how you could do this for you. So let's stick with the physical development one. So if your goal was just developing your body, either fat loss or muscle gain, whatever it is, toning up, whatever that is for you. Monthly, you might measure progress pictures, okay? You might do measurements, okay? Weekly, you might be like, right, my weekly behaviors that I need to do, the how to do it, I need to self-reflect. I need to do like a weekly reflection. Like I said there, get to the end of the week and be like, right, how has this week gone? What are my wins? What's gone really well? And what are my lessons? And actually look at the data and the things that you've done. How many ticks have I got of my actual behaviors? It might be self-reflect weekly, a weekly food shop, okay? That's something that I'm gonna do weekly. Plan my week out, actually get to either maybe a Saturday or a Sunday or even a Monday morning to plan the upcoming week, because things change week to week. That's a weekly behavior. And then it might do between 3 and 5 gym sessions per week. Okay, that is an example of your weekly behaviors. And then daily behaviors, you get even more precise. Okay, literally, you could have a list up on your wall with this that you tick off, or use a software like Trello that I mentioned. Now, daily behaviors might be 10,000 steps a day. Okay, you either have or you haven't, or between 8 and 12,000 steps per day. It might be 3 protein-filled meals per day. Might be eating 5 a day. Eating obviously 5 fruit and veg a day. Plan and reflect daily. Have I actually planned my top outcomes for today? Have I reflected and seen how it's actually gone? And it might be communicate with a coach. Communicate with your coach, communicate with your mentor or anything like that. Or if you don't have one at the moment, obviously I'm going to say they're really important because I understand the value. That's obviously what I do with people. But even if you don't have one at the moment, communicate with one person who kind of gets you, whether it's some sort of accountability buddy. If you're training and in the gym together, like drop them a message daily. How are you getting on with that? Might be a friend, might be your partner, but communicate daily. That is just an example of how you can split your behaviors into monthly, weekly, and daily behaviors. But the key thing about all of the things that I've mentioned here is that that is getting very, very clear. And it removes any ambiguity, removes any vagueness. Because remember, vague goals create confusion, create anxiety, and stop you feeling inspired on a consistent basis. And just to add, that how that we've just gone through there, the how is really the hard bit. Okay, so trying to do it on your own is hard, it's slow, it can be painful, okay? And look, this is where someone like myself and Lead from the Front can help, okay? I'm very good at helping people do this. It's what I love doing. And if you would benefit from that, I'd love to hear from you. So you can literally find me on Instagram over @IsaacJLewis, and feel free to drop me a message. Say you listen to this podcast episode, and even if you don't want to become a client, that's totally cool. Even if you just want to chat and get some insight from me as to like, right, I listened to the podcast, here are my ideas, what do you think of that? I love chatting through that stuff. Literally, it's what gets me up out of bed in the morning. So feel free to do that, okay? So that is everything I wanted to go through, guys. So I hope you found this episode really, really insightful. And just to sum up, create space and get clear on what you want, okay? Then for the process, actually think, what am I measuring? What are my success metrics? And then what are the monthly, weekly, daily behaviors that I need to do in order to get there? And go in that order, so kind of reverse engineer it. But guys, I hope you loved this episode. If you have any feedback, would love to hear it. And I'll see you in the next episode.